Good evening, everyone. We are live from St. Regis. Tonight is Q&A with Father Dave. We will continue these throughout the summer at 6 p.m. on Mondays. So tonight, Father, we had a question that came in via one of our viewers.
Okay.
And the question was, how can the Archbishop lift the obligation to Sunday Mass?
Okay.
And the question was, what is the Sunday Mass obligation all about, and how does the Archbishop have power to do that?
He's the Archbishop. No. Yeah. So Sunday Mass obligation is I'm going to take it from a couple different angles. I don't like starting with the obligation part of Sunday because in an ideal world, even not in an ideal world, in just a kind of a nice communal, faith-filled community world, Sunday coming together to worship the Lord the way Jesus asked us to do it in the tradition of this community that's lived throughout the centuries is something that just is invitation to all the people of the community, and hopefully people kind of embrace that as part of what it means to be a baptized disciple, a baptized member of the community trying to live their life. And so to me, it starts with kind of what does it mean to be an integral part of a community of faith centered on what Jesus asked that community to do, come together in his name, and to allow all of that we experience to be tied into his once-for-all offering that's ongoing, so we can bring anything in our life so that can become part of that eternal offering of the Lord. And so to me, it's just like it's exciting. It's like that means even if I had a bad day, a bad week, things would go well. I could take all that and give it to the Lord and receive the gift of the Lord's word and sacrament that way. So the angle I like to always take is the invitation that's there, that is such a wonderful invitation that, and it's like, wouldn't we want everyone, their experience to be part of that? So if you could be here, you just decide not to be here, we lose something as a community, because that means your portion of that offering is not connected to us at that moment. So the community is diminished for everyone who makes a conscious choice and to not be there because they just decide they don't want to be there. So the church, over time, eventually gets enshrined in human church law, says that to help people understand the importance of that, we're going to attach the obligation to it. And so the obligation is to become part of one of the community masses on Sunday. And when the Saturday night masses were allowed as a vigil mass for Sunday, that was allowed as one of the masses to fulfill one's obligation. But to fulfill one's obligation is kind of a minimal way of saying it. More maximally, bring yourself, your joy, your life, your hopes, your disappointments, your discouragements, your things that are going to happen. Bring all that to the Sunday Eucharist, because that's what allows the community to thrive and to do what the Lord wants us to do. So the church then, to help people understand the importance of it, attaches an obligation to it. And the question would come in over time, well, but I couldn't make it. Well, why couldn't you make it? I was sick. I was traveling. I had to take care of my elderly parent. My child got kind of sick as they're going out the door. So all the different kind of ways in which life happens and causes kind of like we couldn't make it. And so the church had to develop some kind of wisdom on how to kind of mediate what's a proper reason not to make it to Sunday Eucharist and what's a less than proper reason. The idea behind that would be then if you to choose not to come to Sunday Eucharist for a less than proper reason is really a way of saying to the Lord, I don't want to be with your people. And so in that sense, that person is deciding they just don't want to be part of God's people at that Sunday Eucharist. And so the church would challenge that person back, saying, no, it's an obligation, not just for you. It's for your own benefit. It's for your own spiritual growth and your soul and stuff like that, but it's for the benefit of everybody. So what becomes a proper reason not to come to church and be part of that Sunday Eucharist? There's lots of reasons, and the church always leaves it in the hands of the individual mature person making the decision, or the parent for their child. All sorts of things can excuse on a given day. Certainly anything to do with illness excuses automatically. And even if it's a case of symptoms where you could spread them with other people. Like sometimes people come to church, maybe not so much now with COVID, but in pre-COVID days, sneezing, not just normal kind of hay fever sneezing, but like sickness, sneezing. It's like no. You don't need to expose the whole community to those germs if you know that that's going on with you. Take some time off, pray. In today's world, you can find masses on TV and live stream temporarily. So anything to do with illness, excuses. Anything to do with sudden, changes that happen that out of your ability. You flat tire along the way and stuff like that. Well, maybe then you could come 3 hours later. Well, please do try. But if you had a good intention of coming to the 10 o'clock Mass, got a flat tire, and took you through that Mass to fix that tire, you're not obligated to change all your plans the rest of the day to come to the noon Mass or one. That can kind of let the obligation go. But it resides on the individual person's conscience to make that choice in a mature way. So the Archbishop has said that, all the bishops I know of have said that to the people, that you know that because of the COVID crisis right now, there's no obligation attached. And he's really saying that he's helping you form your conscience, that given the circumstances, a mature conscience should come to the conclusion that if I don't find myself ready or able or I have some leeriness about coming to Mass during these conditions, then you are excused. Now, what about other kind of situations that are kind of gray areas? That's where then the church says, well, go talk to your pastoral leaders, talk to your priest, and so forth. And generally, then the person could form their conscience and make that choice. Well, but what about certain extraordinary circumstances? Well, who do you go to? Can the priest do it? Can I just make my decision conscience? The church understood that it was in the role of the bishop as the chief liturgist of the diocese. He's kind of the symbol of unity of coming around celebrating Eucharist, that it's in his responsibility as a successor to the apostles to make that decision in a general way, on behalf of the community. So the bishop was given then, understood to have, not so much given the permission, because a bishop as a successor of the apostle is equal on that level to the Pope, who's a successor of an Apostle Peter. Now, the Pope can override the local bishop if it's for the sake of unity of the church. But if it's something to do not with the unity of the church, but the diocese and the life of the diocese, that bishop has direct from Jesus authority to make those kind of decisions. And so all bishops of the world are the ones who are in the position of what they call the ordinary, the head of a diocese, understand themselves as having the ability, if necessary, to make a decision, a prayerful decision on behalf of the people of God of that diocese, saying, here are the rules that will dispense you from obligation. And where does it come from? It technically comes from our understanding of how the bishop, as the successor of the apostle, is given the authority by Jesus to maintain the community and faith. Yeah. Any thoughts that follow up on that?
One thought that's coming to mind is, how would you respond to a person who feels extreme guilt when they miss?
Yeah, see, that's a great question, because that's maybe more the reality is people coming because we've been so good at kind of, at least in times past, of drumming in the obligation, that there are a lot of Catholics who feel guilty if they don't come, even if they've been dispensed. So they'll maybe even confess it at a confession. Blessed be Father, for I have sinned.
I haven't been to Mass since March 13th.
Right, and it's not a sin. It's just that they feel guilty, so they're sharing that, and it's okay to do that, but that's not a sin. I mean, they didn't commit a sin because they weren't obligated to do that. So the guilt part, I do think people who have a scrupulous conscience who tend to feel guilty about a lot of things, they need good pastoral advice to try to encourage them to not focus on what makes them guilty, or not do things based on what makes them feel guilty, but to have patterns in their life that are healthy and just trust those patterns. So you try to kind of help them have good, healthy patterns in their life. And if necessary, please talk to a priest or another pastoral leader in a way that could maybe help you understand where your feelings of guilt are dictating too much of your behavior. But let me go to the other side though too. I would say most people don't come to church on Sunday, not during COVID. Now let's get past COVID. Let's go back to where things are normal. Most people do not come to church on Sunday. They just choose not to come to church on Sunday. It's like once a month is enough. Once every couple months, here and there, when something's happening, I'll come. And the church would challenge people like that to say that really the loss that you're giving to that community, you're really the whole community is losing because you're not there, and you're losing as well. And so please rethink that. Get that pattern in your life, because it does become a pattern, right? It's a pattern of life. And we do this with food, we do this with exercise, we do this with spiritual practices, we do it with worship. That, daily prayer, very important. Weekly Eucharist, very important. And if people build that into their life and do it, not just haphazardly, but in a way that's consistent, and help children grow in that, it's a huge difference. It's just, we give ourselves a foundation every week to connect to Jesus, to hear his word, to be part of a community, to get challenged and inspired, to get reminded, to get fed, to be nourished. And so I think those who kind of get it just don't do it out of obligation. They do it out of a kind of a desire to want to be here. But if someone feels they can't be here, if you have to talk to somebody, you can talk to a priest or pastoral leader. But truly, it's in the hands of the person's own conscience. And conscience is your deepest sense of who you are. Deepest sense of who you are. Do you think the Lord is inviting you to this community gathering? If you think no, and there can be good reasons, okay, fine, then make that decision. But again, in my experience, most people get out of busyness and other things interrupt people's lives. They get into a habit, what I would call a bad habit, of just thinking, you know what, maybe not this week, maybe not next week, maybe the week after. So we begin the habit of coming to church on Sunday fades, and it gets harder to get back into that habit. And the end result is we all lose. I think they lose because I think the Lord wants us here. We lose because part of Eucharist is to bind the community together in unity, and the world loses because that person does not get fed by God's word, challenged by God's word, and fed by the sacrament to go forth as part of his body of Christ. So by them losing out, all the people of their life lose a spiritual anchor, a spiritual nourishment, a spiritual energy that comes from freely, joyfully participating in Sunday Eucharist.
So how, if I know somebody that is not going to church regularly, how would I approach them? If we're trying to shift from this idea of obligation to desire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you don't do is say you're committing moral sin by not coming to church, because one, you can't judge anyone else's conscience, and two, when the church says something's a mortal sin, what they're saying is there's a serious obligation here, but it's still in the hands of the person making the decision. And so I don't think we approach it the negative way, which would be like, you're a sinner, it's a mortal sin, you're going to hell, God doesn't love you, you're destroying your relationship with God. Because again, that's way too, we can't judge that for somebody else. So that's why I like to go on the desire side. The ideal would be, if it's honestly true, is to share what we get out of Eucharist. Why are we there? What would it be like if I wasn't there? What would I be experiencing in my life if I didn't have Eucharist? To share that with the person. That's the ideal. So you do it not by heavy-handedness, but in the conversation, if it opened up a natural opening to that, you share the importance of Eucharist. And I would focus on that desire level, that invitation level, and just what would happen if I lost that Eucharist would be a tremendous loss in my life, and a tremendous sense of that I am not opening myself up as fully to the Lord as the Lord wants me to do. And so I'd feel like I'm not doing what the Lord wants me to do. And so and again, if they really then wanted to pursue that, well, are you telling me it's a sin? You can say, well, so because I don't see myself doing what the Lord wants, I'm going to talk about myself. The Lord wants me to do so in my life. Yeah, I find that to be a sin. Well, how serious is that sin? I mean, people can keep pushing that. I said, well, if we're not careful, by putting a pattern in our life of indifference to the community and to the Lord's invitation to receive him in Eucharist, we can begin a pattern that can get us further and further and further away from the Lord. So could it turn into a pattern that puts us into a very serious situation of sinfulness, it's very possible it could do that. Well, are you calling me a sinner? No, I'm not calling you a sinner. I'm inviting you to in kind of just a friendly way to joyfully, freely come to the Eucharist, be part of the Eucharist. You are important to the Eucharist. Even if you don't do much, just come and be there, part of it. But if you add your voice and your presence, and oh my goodness, what a gift you give to the whole community by being part of the Eucharist, and how happy the Lord is when you come to Eucharist.
So we've been, 10 weeks reopened?
Is that what it's been?
I think this past
all of
weekend
June,
was
and
9.
yeah.
What has been your experience of the Eucharist now that we've reopened? What have you been?
At first I thought what would happen would be very, very few people, tentative, and it was very few people, and they would kind of slowly build, almost like a nice
Crescendo.
Yeah, well, now we're kind of a gradually growing kind of. It has done that. It's like it's kind of like. There's 1 week where the 8 o'clock Mass was the largest Mass. In fact, it was, during the summer, 8 o'clock Mass on Sunday, we'd get maybe 100 to 110 people in the old days, right? We had 80 one Sunday. It's like, this is good. Maybe it's going to grow. The next Sunday
and
it was
10 o'clock was.
And 10 o'clock was, I think, 90 or 70 or and then the next week 8 o'clock was 55, and 10 o'clock was maybe 70 or something again. And so there doesn't seem to be any. People seem to be more kind of feeling things out. I think people. I would say there's a core group, maybe 15%, maybe 20%, 15 to 20% of the past. Who have become comfortable again being in church at the Mass that they want to go to. And then the other people who come seem to be people who kind of check it out.
Maybe
okay,
the 10 o'clock was too many people.
Yeah,
so
maybe I'll try that one, or was I comfortable? Or maybe they came from another parish because the other parish has other rules about who's open. So some parishes, because of the size of the church, had to say call in ahead of time, or only certain portions of the community could come at different Masses. So we get a few people like that, but it just seems to be kind of going hovering around, about 1/3 of the numbers, but give and take, in any given weekend it can go up and down, but about 1/3 seems to be the maximum that we receive. Now, the experience better than I thought. I thought it was going to be a bad. I'm not bad. I thought it would be too passive an experience, too kind of deadening of experience. I've been pleasantly surprised. I mean, we have Mass on, so the responses are not as, we respond.
Direct or
right,
robust,
and here at this parish, we made it very clear not to belt out you don't have to be an opera singer, just in a very modest voice, sing in fact, if you go down just a little bit from a volume point of view, but singing doesn't do any, in fact, it sheds less air than speaking. So if you do it right way, and so singing has been halfway decent given that we have Mass on, and I'm delighted because singing adds to the idea. I was worried about the spread out because we had to open up every pew as a potential place to sit because people have to be comfortable, and we have every other pew blocked out, and so no, people even they haven't spread out all the way, so we still have some room left, but even when they spread out, I thought, how are they going to be? Overall, I still get a sense of community. I still get a sense of unity. I say the most awkward thing has been trying to figure out the new practice of communion, to say we really just have to kind of go a lot slower. We're still not there. Mm-hmm. I still watch people kind of run down the aisle and they're bumping up against each other. And what it is the family. Yeah, the family can do that because they're a cohort together, right? But the next person should let that family get out of the way before they come forward so that we maintain the proper distance. So we have to get better still at communion, slowing it down, doing section by section, not trying to get it all done quickly and so forth. But we're getting there, and so that part's probably the most awkward part. We've had delightful First Communion on a couple times now. And we have to keep it small because 1 or 2 at the most because of the limited numbers, and so it can be very personal, but also there's a real intimacy there. So overall, I would like to get back to running the water so people are reminded of the baptism. The rule of the diocese right now is still to keep the font empty, but we have we do put some, we check the balance of the water, and we do run it constantly, and so. I'm not going to mess with that yet, but I would love to see that because that's an important baptismal symbol. But other than that, I'm trying to think what else is pretty much similar.
The only thing that I have been noticing noticing is because fewer people are coming to church, liturgical ministers,
Thank you.
we're
Yes.
constantly
Yes.
trying
Thank
to
you. Thank you.
recruit people to help.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
do we have a lector today? Do we have a server?
Because a number of our people, are still a little bit tentative about coming, and if they're elderly, it's perfectly understand. And no one's obligated. No one is obligated. On the other hand, people, don't be afraid either. Don't do it. Don't not come out of fear. Maybe test it out and stay in a corner. There's still some corners where you're not going to be around anybody. Test it out and see if you can be comfortable, because we do. We need greeters. We need ushers. We need electors. We need communion ministers. I mean, we don't need tons, but we need some more, because
And we've been tapping the same people.
Exactly.
It seems, over
Exactly.
and over. And there is I know people want to, out of desire, want to participate, but sometimes it's just nice to, okay, this Mass, I don't have anything that I'm responsible for.
You don't want them to always be on all the time, right? So,
But, and if people are interested in, maybe they've never been a lector before.
just stop any staff member after Mass, email any one of us. Mary Von Koss will be in contact with them. She's our point person on staff for it. But you can go directly to her, but you can also tap anybody on staff and say, hey, would you let someone know I'm interested in whatever it is.
And it was nice. We have had a couple people step up to be usher, because a lot of the requirement or the responsibilities are so limited now that it's easy to do. So going to shift completely off, but any plans this summer now that we're
now we're going to make it for personal plans?
Personal
Gonna make
plans.
it personal. I don't like it personal. I don't want to talk about personal stuff. I am going to try to get a little week in there in early August, chunk of a week at least. My only plan is just to kind of decompress, and no travel plans. My family has a cottage on Lake Huron near Oscoda, above Oscoda, so that's always a kind of a summer destination for a couple days usually. But no big plans. It's just there's so much happening. In fact, maybe not this one, but maybe somewhere in August, when we know a little bit more about the family of parishes, let that be kind of maybe every month that could be one of the topics. Where are we on that family of parish thing? We're not anywhere yet, so I'll just leave that alone. Just remind people that the diocese is going to invite parishes into a grouping, keeping them as parishes, but that would allow them to share priests, share resources over time, not right away, over time. And so that's the idea behind the family of parishes. So
I just thought of it, but we have a missionary co-op. You want to talk about?
Okay, I can do that too.
And how that's going to happen this year.
Okay, that's even better. Yeah, thank you. I'll get off my personal stuff that way. So the first weekend of August was designed to be a missionary cooperation weekend. Every year, the Archdiocese asks every parish to host a missionary outreach. It could be from within the United States, a religious order that works in Appalachia or somewhere like that. It could be a religious order that works in Africa or Asia or Latin America. There's a central office called the Society for Propagation of Faith that organizes all that. So we were given a contact with I don't remember, Society of, anyway, I don't remember.
I remember the initials, but I don't remember the exact
we're still waiting
name.
for their material so we can publicize their material. But basically, we invited them to be here the first weekend of August. They were on board to do that, but because of COVID and some other things happening in their community, they lost their normal missionary appeal guy. They're trying to kind of spread that out to others. So it didn't work out to have someone from that order and that mission outreach to be with us the first weekend of August. But we're still going to do it as a missionary outreach Sunday. Someone from that order will video a 5-minute appeal. We'll play it on our at each Mass that weekend on our projector screen, and it'll be this typical invite people to get an envelope and to turn it in, and it'll go to the money goes through the central office of the diocese, and it's all then sent to that order for their outreach. So we're hoping for some material in the bulletin this weekend, and then the following weekend there'll be some bulletin material, but also that'll be the first weekend in August that we do the video.
So when the the United States does this, does it all go to one order or it goes to?
No, so every diocese is separate. This is done on a diocesan basis. We've had a long tradition in Detroit as one of the, Monsignor Maloney from St. Anselm is the head of that for years. And he has the reputation
Decades.
of being, decades true, of being the best at this across the entire diocese. I mean, I think we end up getting as much money in a year from our outreaches as even like New York does, you know, and we're way smaller than that diocese. So we have he has a nice system in place. He rotates the orders. They have to be vetted. You know, there's a lot of people who ask for money and you say, okay, show us your outreach, show us how you, what are you doing in terms of the money? Show us a audited statement of how you've used the money, how much goes directly to your outreach, how much goes to administration. Now we've added the auditing of protecting God's children type thing. So they have to go through a vetting process to show that they have everything in order. Then they get approved by the diocese, and then he has them on their list, and then he looks at all the parishes. He tries to pair parishes together. Like we often get paired with a couple other parishes that are, I'll be honest, not as financially adept as, I mean, they're in areas that do not have as many financial resources as we do. Mm-hmm. So, but that way, that missionary outreach will get able to still challenge the people everywhere. It's not just about money, it's about prayer. It's about a mindset that we are part of a missionary church across the world. So it's not just, money's very important, obviously, but it's not just about money. And so that way, he gets money, but also he gets to tap into the hearts and minds of 2 or 3 parishes. And then the next year, like in my 30 years as a pastor, I have never had a repeat mission.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I've had 30 different outreaches.
Different orders.
Sometimes it's a religious order of priests, sometimes it's of sisters, sometimes it's been a lay group run thing. So it's been a variety of ones. I've never had a repeat. So there's probably a good 100 plus missionary type outreaches that we've approved. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, we're actually coming to the end of time. So nothing else personal, Father?
No, nothing else personal.
All right. So if you can close us in prayer.
Yes. Thank you so much. Lord, in this midsummer time, continue to be with us and continue to give us a sense of hope. Any discouragements or setbacks, help us to see them with level hearts. Help us to embrace that invitation to connect to your people through your Son at Eucharist. Help us to take the gift of Eucharist and share it within not just our own lives and families, but in all parts of our lives, so that the world might know that truly you are at work. Continue to be with all of us. We pray this through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Amen.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Just a reminder that tomorrow night, Tuesday, we will live stream exposition with adoration and benediction at 8 p.m. Our children's mass on Wednesday is live streamed at noon, and then the rosary is at 4 o'clock on Thursday, and then our weekend schedule is Saturday at 4:30, Sunday at 8, 10, and 12, and the 10 o'clock is live streamed. And if you watch the live stream and you want to receive communion, you can come to the parking lot at the end of the 10 o'clock mass. So thank you for joining us, and have a good night.
Thank you, Chris.